Hello, 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 and welcome back. So today we have an exciting session. We're going to be talking about pointers and arrays. So let's go ahead and get started. So as you know, you should have already seen the video on arrays and the one on pointers, but what you can see today is that pointers and arrays have a lot in common. So if you remember, an array is simply declared in such a way that you declare a variable. Say, for example, we have scores, and we can say something like this. And let's make it a float. And let's say we have scores from 0 to 100, and we can do something like this. Let's say we have a 78.5, and we have an 88.5 and a 90.5 and a 100. So if I wanted to display the scores, let's say I have a function that prints out the scores, I can write something like this. So there I have the scores, display scores. Of course, I haven't defined that function, so I define that function here. And I can receive that function in a couple of different ways, and I can receive that function just like this, and I will have no problem defining that function. One thing about it, since it's an array, I may want to give it the length. So, and then I can simply use my for loop. And I can use the printf. And that will display my scores. Go ahead and run it. And we have an error. Let's see. And this is a good opportunity to see that it tells us that there's an error at 5. Implicit declaration of function print. And yes, I forgot the if, so let's run it again. Display scores. Here are too few arguments to function. Oh, yes, because I have the length. And our length is 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have our scores. So there's another way to display scores, and I can show you the method too. So let's say that we were going to display scores. We can also do this. And we can simply, in this case, say scores. And we can just copy the for loop so that it'll be faster for us to do it. And we can say just like this, and you will notice that this will also work. And let's call it like this. And you notice that it still works because it's almost like scores in the pointer and the array are very similar in nature, because remember that an array is a contiguous allocation in memory, so it knows how to move. So that's one way of doing it. Another way we could have done it is simply by doing something like this. We can actually say scores since it's a pointer, let's call it p scores. And we can say p scores. And we actually have to increase the location of our scores. Now, when I say this, p scores plus plus, I'm actually incrementing to the next address that scores points to it. And since it's an array, a contiguous array, it'll display the scores. So when I run it, it gives me the same results. And one thing I want to do also is display the address of the score. And let's say so we want to display the address of the score. So in this case, we're just going to say scores, and it's going to give us the address. And one thing you will notice is that they're contiguous. You notice here that the address of the score is from 0, because all these are the same. These are all the same all the way across, except, let me see. Yes, all of them are the same. And they increment by 4 bytes. That is because it is contiguous and it just increments by 4 bytes. If we were to have more, it would just continue incrementing. Now, one thing about doing this is that you can actually walk off the end of the array, and you could actually do it here as well. So you want to be careful about that, and that is the reason that we're passing the length of the array. You can do some other interesting things. Let's say we can actually do this. Instead of saying this, instead of incrementing the address of the array, we can say p scores plus I, and we can say p scores plus I. Oh, we have to name it 3, and we also have to call it. And you notice that it does the exact same thing. And so why is that? There's just different notation for doing the same thing. So you want to do what is more clear to whoever will be maintaining this code. So in my opinion, if you do scores like this, it is a lot clearer. So it's just something to know and something to be aware of, but just don't go crazy with pointers and pointer math. And you can do some interesting things, but I wouldn't recommend just getting carried away and doing things like this, because it can actually be quite confusing to maybe programmers coming from other languages. So if it's clear to do it this way, then do it this way. And the reason is that the array is actually a pointer, because if the name scores points to the first location in memory, and it can move. Another thing that you will notice is that depending on the type, you notice right now it jumps 4 bytes at a time. So it'll go 0, 4, 8, C. But what if instead I had a double? And of course I have to change scores 3 to double. What happens now? It goes 0, 8, 0, 8. It's actually jumping. You notice that it incremented here, and it jumped 8 bytes. This is the hexadecimal, so this is the 16th place. So when it jumps from here to here, it jumps 1. It looks like it jumps 2 here, right? But it's not 2 because it's hexadecimal. So it's actually jumping. It's jumping 1 whole place in the 16th place. So this is actually jumping 16. So that's why you see this right here. So it's actually jumping from here to here, which is actually jumping 8. And it doesn't look that way, but from here to here is actually 8 bytes, and from here to here is 8 bytes. It's just that it's hexadecimal, because from 5 to 6, this is the 16th place. It's it's jumping actually 8 places. And so when we did that, and the score knows how to jump, how to go exactly, how to go to where it's supposed to go. So there you have it. The pointers can actually be used as arrays, and arrays can be used as pointers. And it's just something to be aware of. In the next session, we're going to be talking about strings and pointers, and you can see how they are actually a little bit different, used a little bit different than this, because a string is actually an array, but it has a special characteristic, and that is that the array actually has a null terminated. It is a null terminated string, so it has the null character. Up to this point, I have shown you that you return values from functions and that sort of thing. So when it comes to arrays, do you want to return an array? Do you want to return a pointer? So you cannot return an array. For example, you cannot do this. You cannot do this and say, let's just call it foo. And however, you can return, let's not make it int, let's make it float. You can return a float. And you can do that. Sometimes that is not the recommended way. Now, this may be confusing because a user may not know what you're actually returning unless you're very clear. So sometimes the best way to do it is to actually modify the array itself. So for example, let's say that we had let's do something very simple and say void insert. Let's write a function where we can insert a substring wherever we see a particular pattern. So for example, insert sub, or at a certain index, insert substring. And let's say, for example, we have or let's just insert. Yeah, we can do that. Let's do that. And we say p target. And then we have this one. And if you remember this, you remember that we don't want this modified. So this is our substring. So we may say something, for example, like insert, whatever we want to insert. So, and let's say that we tell it exactly where to insert it. We'll say, actually we say index, insert index. Let's separate this for readability, just so we can see it on the screen. And we say, for example, for, and we can go we don't have a length, do we? So we don't have a length. And since we have insert index, we can actually say, for example, here, we can say insert index. I less than and we don't have the length. So let's say that we had here the length of this, and we have insert length. And we can just say insert length. And we can say p target, right? So we have p target I, because that's where we start inserting. And we assign the insert, but this time instead of inserting, we're going to insert from 0. So we I listed insert length, I++, but the target we're going to start inserting from the insert length, and then it's going to be plus I. And for insert, we're actually going to just take whatever I is, because we're going to insert that. Now, we're just going to assume that the strings are long enough for us to insert. And let's go ahead and get rid of this. And let's say that we were inserting, let's just create something. And I'll call it my line. We'll make it 100 equals 0. And care, we want to insert the word, let's say hello. So let's do this. Let's make some room so we can actually read this. And we insert substring. And we pass it my line because that's what we want to insert. And then we say the word, we want to insert the word, and we give it the word length, and we say the word length is 5. And then we also need to tell it where do we want to insert it. So let's insert it at position, let's just say 2. And let's print the results. And we will do this. And we'll place our word right here. This, we get an error, expected. Okay, where did it expected this? On line 27, so we left something out on line 27. Okay, we left out a comma. Let's run it again. And our new line is that. Why is that? 100 word target. We're inserting the word. Okay. I++, insert word. And I wonder if it's because, let's say, it's not null terminated. Let's see. Still not inserting. Oh, and I see the reason why. The reason why we're not, no, actually that's correct. P target, insert length, plus I. Oh, insert index. We want to go from the insert index plus I, and we want to insert I, and that should do it. Let's try it again. Let's get rid of this for the time being, because I think there's some confusion there. Okay, we seem to have a problem here. And the problem in this, and I had to pause the video to investigate a little bit, and one mistake that I made was when I initialized this character, I initialized it to 0, which is the same thing as the null character. So when you display a string, the string stops on the first null character that it finds. Since we had started with no characters, and then we're inserting at position 2, right? So we have no characters in the beginning. So what we must do in order for this to work, we actually have to have something really big, something that doesn't have the no terminating characters. So in order for us to fix that, we would have to say something, for example, my line 0, and let's just assign it a space. And then we could actually do assignment like this, which is something I haven't shown you. We could actually do it like this, and just so we can have something. And we have the first 3 characters. That'll get rid of the no character at 0 and 1, and it'll display our line. So let's try it. So as you can see, and one thing that I did remove was this, so you can actually see the string itself. And you can see that we have hello, and it doesn't display the whole 100 line character, because as soon as it gets to the no character, it stops at that point. And that is the reason that we were having an issue. So, and it's something that you can't let get in your way. If you actually initialize your strings like this, normally you initialize your strings with, with something like this. But that might still do it where we have it, because that would still, if we didn't do this, it probably would still have a problem. Let's comment this out and let's see. And we have the same problem because we have a terminating character at the end, and we start actually changing past that point. Essentially what we have in 0, and really all the elements in the array, we have null characters, and the way this knows when to stop printing is when it runs into that. So since it runs at position 0, and then it doesn't print out our line. So we have to have something like this, so we actually have something in there. Just something to watch out for. So, and my main purpose of this was to show you that when you use arrays, a lot of times you don't necessarily want to return the array. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and modify the array that you pass in and return that. And you don't really return it, you just modify that location in memory. So we could also do, the same pointer math and everything else that we do, but since it's an array, we're actually modifying the array. And this will work with integers, it'll work with anything you throw its way. For example, if you had integers here instead of characters, and let's say we had integers, so we have p target, insert, insert link, insert, but this time, let's say we have integers, and we can't initialize them in this way anymore, so now we have to initialize them like this. And we say word, and we might say, just give it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're inserting. We don't need to do this because we're not actually doing a string. And we won't be able to display it like this. What we have to do instead is put this in a for loop. Let's just go 20. And we won't say line because it's not really a line. We'll just say array. And you will see that it has those values. Okay, hold on a second. What do we have wrong here? I less than 0, I, my line I, %d. Oh, we can't have this anymore. Let's get rid of this altogether. It's not a string. And we have this, and you can see that we started inserting into the array at position 2 through 6. We inserted those elements. And actually this is, we shouldn't do this because it'll actually insert garbage, so we want to do 5. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, that's what we want. And we start inserting. But my point is that we can modify the array by passing. We can pass a pointer, and we actually modify the array. So when you pass an array, you modify it. Now, and I talked about this before, this const means that lets whoever is using our function that we are not going to modify this value. This one, we will. And this, it will not even let us, even if we try to modify this. But if it doesn't, if you don't pass it in that manner, then it can be modified, and it actually comes back modified. Well, thanks for watching. That's all for now. And if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe. If you have questions, go ahead and leave your questions in the comments below. I will get to them when I see them and help you in any way I can. Thanks for watching.